Welcome back. In episode 2, we mastered the Django admin panel and added some tasks, but right now, only we can see them through the admin interface. Today, we are going to build the actual user interface that visitors will see. We will create views, URL routes, and templates to display our tasks on real web page. So let me run the server and see what we did last time. So this is the admin panel that we did, okay? And then we will do now the web page. In this video, what we will build today is we will create a view to fetch tasks from the database. We will set up URL routing so users can access our page. We will build HTML templates to display the tasks beautifully. We will connect everything to get together into a working web page. Now, let's understand the MVC model, that is Model View Controller. So example, Django's MVT, which is Model Template View Pattern, whereas the models is the database structure, which we built in this episode 1. We have V, which is views, which will contain the business logic that the user sees. And then we will have templates, which will have our HTML representation layer. And then we will have URLs, which will be our routing, which view goes with which URL. This is how Django organizes code. It is that makes it so powerful and maintainable. Now let's create our first view. Now we go back to our VS Code and then we go, let me close all these we have done. Now we go to our app, which is to do, and then go to views. Now we need to create our first view. So here we will create a function called task list. It will list all the tasks and then we will pass in the request. It will take the request as an argument. And then we have to import our task from models since we are going to fetch all the tasks from the database. So we'll say from .models import task, like that. Now let's get all the tasks from the database. To get all the tasks from the database, we will say tasks equals to task.objects.all. So here we are getting all the tasks from the database. Now we need to create a context of which we will pass it to the template. So we'll create a tasks context. So we'll say context, which will be a dictionary, and then we will have a key value. So key will be tasks and our value will be the tasks. Okay, this will be our value. Now we will pass this context into our template. So let's render the template first. So we'll say return render. Then we pass in the request. And then we define our template. Our template will be to do, and then we will have task list.html. Okay, once we have rendered our template, now we need to pass this context to our template. So we'll have a comma and then say context, like that. So let me explain line by line. First, we imported render, this render here. It combines a template with data, and then we imported the task model to access the database. And then we have this task.objects.all, which will help us to get all the tasks from the database. And then we have this context, which we passed into the template. Okay. And then I want you to notice the task is a dictionary, which makes our tasks available in the template. And then I passed it here. Now we need to set up our URL routing. So inside our app, we need to create url.py. So we'll say urls.py. And then now we need to create our routing. So we have to import path. So we'll say from Django.urls import path, like that. And then we need to import our views because URLs are created out of views. So from import views, like that. Now let's create our URL patterns. So we'll say URL patterns. It's a list. URL patterns is a list. And then we will say path. We'll have an empty string. And then we will say views. And then we call our view, which was task list. And we give this URL a name. So name is equals to task list, like that. Okay. So let me explain this. So we created a new urls.py file in our to-do app, and then we have this path, which means is the root URL of, this is the root URL of our app. And then we have this views.task list, which connects the function we just created here in our views. So this is our function. And then we have the name task list, which lets us reference this URL elsewhere. Okay. Now we need to update the main URL, the main project URL. So we'll go to do project, and inside URLs here, we need to include the app URLs. So first we need to import this. We need to import include like that. And then we will go inside the URL pattern list and create path, give it an empty string. And then we will say, let me close the server. And then we will say include like that, and say include to-do.urls. Okay, so here we have include all the URLs of the application, which is to do. So to explain this, first of all, we added include to the imports, and then we added this URL route that tells Django to look for more URLs in our to do app. So this keeps our project organized. Each app manages its own URL. So remember, in this app, we created the urls.py. So it is easy to manage the URLs for this application in this file. Now, we need to do a configuration for our templates. So let me close this. Okay, close this. Now to do a configuration for our templates, we need to open the settings.py file and scroll down to templates. So we need to tell Django where to find our templates. So we need to configure this. So we'll say base directory, and then we say look for a folder called templates, like that. So when you add this line, it is basically telling Django like go to the root directory, this base directory here. Okay, this variable, it has been defined at the top here. So you can see it shows the parent. Okay, so that one, we are basically telling Django like find our templates at the root of the project in a folder called templates. So once we have done that, we need to create that folder now at the root of our project. So we'll create that and say templates, like that. Now we have templates. Okay, so once we have that templates, let's go back to our views and see how did we render our templates. So if we go to the views here, you will see our template, the first template, which is task list. It should be found inside a to-do folder. So we'll go back to the templates folder and create a folder called to do, and then we will create our template inside there. So we'll say task list.html, just like that, and we have our template. So inside this template, let's create our HTML. So like that. Now here at the title, let me close this. As well. So here we will have my to-do list, like that. And then inside our body, let's have a h1 tag, and this will be our to-do list, like that. And now we want to get all of the tasks and display them right here. Okay, and display them right here. So we need to use a for loop to display this, and we are going to use Django templating engine, which is Ginger, to do this. So if I open my views, we will be able to see the variables that we used when we were getting all the tasks. So this is the variable that we need to loop through. Okay, the tasks here we are getting all the tasks from our database. So to loop through the tasks that we have received, we will use Ginger and say like that, have that curly braces and the percentile, and say for task in tasks. Okay, and close that for loop. To close it, you just say n4, like that. And then inside, let's create a div. Inside that div, we need to display that task title. So we'll say task dot title, like that. So we are looping through the tasks which we queried here. Said that we want to get all the tasks from the database, from this model called the task, and then inside the task had a field called title. So we want to display this field. Okay, so that is why here we passed in task.title. Now we also want to display the tasks that have been completed and those ones that have not been completed. To do that, let's add a class here and say class equals to, and say, let's say this is a task. Okay, let it have a variable of task, and then we use those ginger and say if task.completed, we need to cross that task. If that task has been completed, we need to cross it. So you say if task.completed, then we say completed, and then we end that if block. So we'll say end if, just like that. So we need to do some styling a bit. Okay, let's do some styling. So inside our head tag, so let's have style for this, and then let's style the body. Let's start with the body, say body, then we open that and say let's have a font family to be Arial sans serif, and then let's have a max width, say max will be max width will be, let's have a 600 pixels, and then let's have a margin. So a margin right. So we want to have a margin right on x-axis to be 50 pixels and on y-axis to be auto. Okay, and then we need to have a padding. Say padding, which will be 20 pixels. So padding top, padding bottom, left, right will be 20 pixels. So let me run this so that we can see how it looks. So Python manage.py run server, like that. Let's give it a second to run, and then if we go here, let's visit localhost. So you see we have my to-do list, and we have those to-do lists that we had in our database. So if I add another task here and say learn Django basics, like that, and save it, and if I go here and refresh, you will see that we have 2 tasks now. Okay, let's keep on styling this. Now we have styled our body. Now remember we have this class called task. So let's style that class. So we'll say to style a class, you start with dot task and open your curly braces, like that. And let's have a padding of 10 pixels. So let's start with a padding of 10 pixels. If we go back here, that is a padding on all for x and y axis to have a 10. If we go back here and refresh, you will see there is a space that has been created between the tasks. And then let's do a margin. Let's have a margin of x-axis to have 10 pixels and then y-axis to have 0. Let's have a border. We want to have a border. So let's have a border of 1 pixel thickness, and we want this to be solid. Let's give it a color. So let's give it a color, D. So that is our color of our border. And then let's give it a border radius. We want those edges not to be sharp. So we'll say border radius. Let's give it a 5 pixels. So we want those edges to be not sharp. So let's check it out. Refresh. So you can see we have the color, we have the border, and you can see these edges are not sharp. Okay, now that is how our tasks will look like. Then let's now style the completed task. We want, once the task has been completed, we want it to have a line through. So to do that, we need as well, you remember we have the completed field. So we'll say dot completed. Okay, you remember we have this completed here, which is a class as well. So we'll say completed, and then we will have a text decoration. So in this text decoration, if the task is completed based on this if condition that we did, if the task is completed, then we have this class of completed. So we want to have a text decoration of line through. So line through, and then let's have a color. We give it 88, like that. So let's let's check it out. If I refresh here, you can see this text has a line through, and if we go back to our database, you can see we have one task that is completed. Buy groceries in store. So this task has been completed, and you can see in our task list it is crossed. It has a line in between to show that this task has been closed. Let's complete this task as well so that we can see. So if I complete this, let's check this completed and save, and we go back here and refresh, you'll be able to see it as well. It has that line through. Okay, so let's now understand what we just did. Let's understand Django template language. Let's break down the template syntax that we just used here. So we have a for loop, which is for task in tasks. This is a loop to loop. We were looping through each task in tasks, okay? And then we have this if statement, if task dot completed, then completed, okay? This is a conditional check. And then we have task dot title, this one. This is to display the task title, okay? So Django template tags uses this ginger, that is a curly brace and percentage sign for logic, and we have double curly braces for variables. So these are variables, okay? Now we have tested, we have seen all the tasks, and we have seen what happens when we complete the task, okay? Now let's move on to styling this template so that we can have a better styling. So we are going to use Bootstrap. So I'm going to copy and paste a Bootstrap CDN. I will leave the link in the description so that you can get that CDN of Bootstrap. So this is our CDN for Bootstrap, okay, this one. And then we also need to have a Bootstrap JS inside our, and I want you to notice where I'm placing this. So Bootstrap CSS, it's within the head tags, and the Bootstrap JS will be right above the closing tag of the body. Okay, I will paste that one there. So this is very important. Ensure that the Bootstrap JS is placed within the body tag and the Bootstrap CSS is placed within the head tag. Okay, so let's style this so that it can have a better look. So what we will do, I'm going to remove this style from the head, okay, so that we can style this using Bootstrap. So let me just delete everything here, delete this. Now let's start. Let me delete this as well. We will style it afresh. Remove this. So let's have a container. Let's start with a div. Let's have a div, and then we open another div, and then let's open another div, and then now let's have a h1. H1 will be my to-do list. Okay, let's check it out how it looks. So this is how it looks. Now let's style it. So let's start with the outer div. So we'll have a class. This one will be a container, and then we will have a margin top of 5. Okay, go to the second div class. So we are having rows. So this will be a row, and then we need to justify the content. We need to place the content at the center. So justify content center. Then third div, let's use the columns. So class, we want to have calls, MD, medium screens. We want to have them to have 8 columns. Okay, let's style the h1 tag. We'll say class equals to text. Let's place that text at the center. So text center, and then we have a margin bottom of 4. Now we need to have a list group whereby we will list all the tasks. So let's open a div. This will be a div, and then this div will have a class of list group. So class list group that, and then we will loop through the tasks. So we'll say for loop for task in tasks. Okay, let's close this for loop so that we don't forget. So we say end for, like that, and then we move down and open another div. Say div, okay, and then let's open another div. Let's have another div, and then let's have a span which will contain our task title, task variable. So here we'll have task dot title. Okay, so let's check it out first before styling it, how it looks. So we go here and refresh. You can see this is how it looks. We have these at the center. Now let's style this. Let's start with the first div. So this one will have a class So we'll have a class, and this class will have a list group like that. This will be a list group item. So this will be items. So it will be list group item. And then now we need to have that conditional check. If we'll say if task dot completed like that. If task dot completed, then we will have a list group item light. Okay, so we'll say list group, it will be a list group item light like that. And then we have to close that if statement. So we'll say and if like that. And now let's move to the second div. Inside the second div, we need to have a class, and now the display will be flex, so dflex. And then we need to justify the content to be between, so justify content between like that. And then we need to align items, so say align items center like that. Now let's style our span. So inside our span we'll say class. Okay, now we also need to have that decoration where we line out if the task is completed. So we need to have that conditional check. So we'll say if task dot completed, then we need to have that text decoration. So we'll say text decoration. It's a text decoration, it's line. Okay, text decoration line through like that. And then we need this text to be muted. So we'll say text muted, and then we end our condition. So we say end if like that. Okay, so let's refresh this so you can see how it looks. So let's try to add another task. So let's say learn HTML and save. Let's refresh and see how it looks. So this is how the task will look, and this is how the task that has been completed will look. We also need to display the time each task was created. So let's add that variable here. So below the span, we need to have another tag called small. Inside the small, we need to have our variable, and this time variable will be task dot created. Remember, we had this field inside our model. So if we go back to the model, you'll be able to see we have this field. So task dot created, let's check it out how it looks. You can see we have them right here. We have a task, and then we have the time it was created, and they are one side and the other side thanks to justify content between. Okay, this justify content between. Now let's style this. We'll say class. We want these dates to be muted, so we'll say text muted. If we check them out like this, you will see now all of them are muted. Okay, one last part that we need to do, we also need to have a way to tell the user if there is no any task. Okay, so we need to add something to tell the user that if there is no task, something like no tasks yet, add some tasks in the admin. So below the right above end for loop, we need to add this, say empt. So this is like if else. Now this is else. So if there is tasks, we need to display them, and empty if there is no task, we need to say something. So let's have a div, and right below that div we need to say no tasks yet. Please add some tasks in the admin, just like that. Okay, let's style this. So we'll say class and say this is a list group item, and then let's place it at the center. So text center like that, and we want this text to be muted. So text muted like that. Okay, so once we have that, let's demonstrate it. Right now text exists, so let's delete all the text so that we can see what should happen if there is no tasks, not text. So if I refresh here, you can see we have no tasks yet. Please add some tasks at the admin. So that means the system is interactive, it's able to give the feedback. Okay, so you can see when the transition is very beautiful. Now that is very incredible progress that we have made today. So just to do a recap, today we created our first views. Okay, let's check that views. So we created our first views, these views, to fetch data from the database using this, and then we set up our URLs. We have these URLs, so we set up this URL routing to make our page accessible. And then the next thing that we did, we built a HTML template to display the tasks. And then the last thing that we did was we added Bootstrap and for beautiful and responsive styling. Now we have a nice looking to-do list right here, okay, but it is still read-only. In the next episode, we will add forms so users can actually create new tasks, mark them as complete, and delete them without using the admin panel. So GitHub link is in description with all today's code. If you are finding this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more Django content. So see you in the next episode.